So I'm hoping that everybody can see my slides. So we are going to be talking about how identity theft occurs, the different forms of identity theft, and some of the scams that happen out there. Tips on how to stop it from happening to you. If you are a victim, what to do, and if you're a potential victim, what to do. So with that said, identity theft occurs anytime somebody gets access to your personal information and they're using it for a nefarious reason. Okay, so that could be your name. It could be your name and social security number, your address, your credit cards. It could be almost anything nowadays. When we're looking at fraud and identity theft, you'll notice from some of the documents that I'm going to show you, 80 years old and over is 18%. And it happens as you're getting older, the more that your information is out there, people are being able to pick up on it. Imposter scams, identity theft, and phony debt collectors are the leading people that people are reporting as issues. In actuality, this information is from 2017. You'll notice that there's been a huge rise in identity theft with all the stuff that's been going on with the unemployment. And in fact, they have people from the National Guard helping with the unemployment crisis that we've had and the fraud that's come out of that. 41% of identity theft is credit card fraud. But there is employment-related fraud, like I said, the unemployment issues that we've had, and also people getting jobs in other people's names. Bank fraud is only 14%. Phone and utility fraud is even less, and government documents and benefits, that has risen with the unemployment issues that we've seen. And this specifically is people putting in unemployment claims in other people's names and having the money directed as a direct deposit to their bank accounts. But identity theft happens in many, many different ways. And unfortunately, with the day of the internet, it has become much more predominant. So we have to keep our eyes open. And this is why I say I've dealt with a lot of people that have had issues with identity theft. So I always talk about it from the extreme of watching out for yourself. You are going to find your own course of action somewhere between what you're doing now and what I'm talking about. This whole idea of identity theft is a very scary idea. Having somebody else, using your accounts, changing your name and doing different things. So it needs to be taken seriously. So the first type of identity theft that occurs is what's called dumpster diving. Dumpster diving, as you can see, is somebody going through the trash, collecting your information out of the trash. How we prevent this from happening is, number one, shredding documents. If you have anything with your name, address, phone numbers, any pertinent details about yourself, credit card numbers, bank statements, things like that, they always should be discarded by shredding them. If you do not have a shredder, if you put them in your fireplace, or if that is not an option for you, at least rip it up into several small pieces and throw it into different trash bags. Okay. But shredders are very easy to obtain nowadays, and they don't cost a whole lot of money. With that, these can change your address, change your account numbers, and things like that. They can divert your mail. I do want to mention that mail also is a federal offense, mail fraud. And we have had cases, specifically in Lowell Lawrence area, but I've heard of cases in other areas where people are actually going into the blue mailboxes of the post office with string and sticky stuff, like with this string, pulling out envelopes from the blue mailboxes. There have been several people caught doing that. So when I talk about mail fraud or mail diversion, we have to look at it in several different ways as well. Number one is when you get your billing statements in, when you are getting a copy of your credit report, we want to look for different addresses that might have had things shipped to them. This is going to be your indicator that somebody has changed your address for different reasons. And getting a copy of your credit report every so often is very important. During COVID, and I will mention this again later on during the class, you are entitled to get a copy of your credit report from annualcreditreport.com on a weekly basis. That will revert back to every year for each reporting agency starting in April. And during a normal course of time, I tell people, every 4 months, get a different credit report and review it carefully. At the top of the credit report, we'll have the different addresses that you have had bills sent to. That's where you're going to find out if somebody has redirected your address. I wouldn't worry so much about things that might be a misspelling. But if you see something that you've never had mail directed there before, that is a red flag, and it is something that you do need to do a dispute on, okay, and have the information corrected. Again, with mail fraud, I always tell people, it is much safer to have a locked mailbox and to bring your mail that you are mailing out directly to the post office. The lock boxes at the post office are very inexpensive. Or if you go down to Lowe's, you can get a lock for your mailbox and give a copy of the key to your mail person. Identity theft can happen in the home as well as other ways. Before I get into skimming, I do want to make mention, ladies and gentlemen, we all have that one table that we dump stuff on in our house. When we come in, we just plop our pocketbooks down or our paperwork and things like that. Unfortunately, you do not know who's entering your home. It could be one of your children's friends. It could be a friend of yours. It could be a relative. It could be a plumber. People in desperate situations do desperate things. My mother was a victim of identity theft. Unfortunately, it was my sister that stole her information. She was living with my mother. She charged up a credit card in my mother's name up to $30,000 before we found out about it. So we went through all the steps and we took care of it. But my warning to you all is, ladies, when you're home, pocketbooks go in under the bed, in a closet, out of sight. Men, please put your envelopes in a drawer, and the paperwork that comes into your house, please deal with it right away or put it in a drawer under lock and key. And also remember what needs to be saved and what needs to be shredded. So anything dealing with tax documentation has to be saved for 10 years. I would keep that under lock and key. Things like Social Security cards and things that we're not using under lock and key. Important documents, you may want to get a safety deposit box at your local bank. The small ones are somewhere around $35 to rent. But to have things in secure spots is the smartest way to go, rather than leaving them out in the open for other people to view. With that said, the next type of identity theft is skimmers or card readers. Skimmers come in many forms, shapes, and sizes. Originally, a skimmer was a card reader that would be sitting next to a register after we got rid of that paper copy that we all remember so well. And next to the register, they just scan your card for you and do your transaction. You would sign on the dotted line and or enter your PIN number in. Because there were so many thefts via that route, because people would bring in a second skimmer and double slide your card. And so many groups of people were found doing this, that they decided in most places to put the machine where you are the one that handles it rather than the clerk. If you are at a restaurant, the safest thing to do, number one, don't use the tabletop skimmers because they're wireless. We'll talk about wireless things later on when we talk about computers, but is to go up to the register and watch the person handling your card. Don't just give it to the wait staff to take it over to the register for you. I used to work in a restaurant. I've never seen this happen, but I have had other people deal with this type of identity theft where the wait staff either would go out back, take pictures of your credit card, or do a rubbing or hand it off to somebody with a skimmer. If you're the only one handling your card, or if you are going to the register and watching somebody handle your card, you know that that's not being done. You can take the receipt, give your tip to the wait staff, and you're all set. But if you are not the one handling your card, you want to be sure that you're watching the person. Also, when you are using a debit card or a credit card, make sure that you cover the screen while you're typing in your PIN number, okay? And make sure people aren't watching over you. The second type of skimmer you see right here, this is a card reader on an ATM machine. Now, ATM machines, unless they are attached to a bank, are just like old-fashioned vending machines. You don't really know who owns them. I only use ATM machines that are attached to a bank. If there is a skimmer inside of this machine, more than likely there's going to be a spot where that red block is on my photo that looks like it could pop off, or something doesn't look quite right with it. If it's not flat and flush, go inside and talk to the teller. Let them know and do your transaction inside. I had a group of veterans in Boston a while back that unfortunately were victims of an ATM machine on the dock side in Boston Harbor. They were all going on a harbor cruise and they used the ATM, pulling out like 20 bucks a piece, whatever, for things that they might want while they were on the cruise. One of them came up to me about 3 weeks later, telling me that his bank told him he was overdrawn for $200. The machine had never given him a receipt, so he checked with his friends that went with him. They all had this issue. Whoever owned that machine was switching the decimal point. We were able to prove this to the bank, so he was refunded his money. But like I said, without a receipt, you have a very difficult time proving things. And identity theft is the one type of crime that it's up to you to prove that you did not do it. So you do want to make sure that you save your receipts, match them up to your bank statements. And if something is wrong on your bank statement, please notify your bank immediately. We'll get into that a little bit more. Now, skimmers have become more prominent there is another type of skimmer that we have that's called the cube that fits into a phone, into a tablet. And these type of skimmers are a little bit more scary because things are wireless on them. Wireless is not safe. Okay. When you are using this type of skimmer, the person that you're doing business with will take your credit card information right there. You'll sign on the dotted line on their phone. The information, according to the people that own the cube, go up to a cloud, and that's where it gets stored. If that person, you may trust them 100%, but if they lose their phone or something happens to their phone, somebody else would be able to pull information down from the cloud and get your information. Also, anything that is wireless, okay, is not extremely safe. If you have a Nexus computer system, you can actually sit in an open wireless situation, open Wi-Fi, and copy every keystroke somebody else does. When we put things on a cloud, it is no longer our private information. And we know about hackers and how hackers get into all kinds of things nowadays. There was an issue about 4 or 5 years ago of a couple of actresses. You may have remembered seeing this on the news. The actresses took some very personal pictures and they saved it into a private cloud. Some paparazzi hacked into that cloud and sold their pictures to a bunch of magazines. They took this person to court. Obviously, they knew who he was because he was selling it everywhere. And the judge threw the court case out, stating that once they saved it on the cloud, they were saving it on another person's computer, on their database. So it was no longer their private information. So we do want to make sure that when we are saving documentation, that we are saving it to a disk drive, saving it to an outside hard drive from our computer, or saving it to one of those plug-in, I'm sorry, I can't even think of what they're called, the plug-in keys that saves data. We do not want to be using clouds for saving our personal information. Okay, so be aware of skimmers. The next type of skimmer that's out there really isn't a skimmer. It's actually a phone app. The newest thing that's been happening is people put this app on their phones and they walk by somebody else's phone and they can duplicate everything on that other person's phone. I had this happen to somebody over at the Army base in Natick, and their ATM or their bank account was slowly being trickled out of Las Vegas. Somebody was like withdrawing tons of money every 10 seconds from their account. Their bank noticed what was happening and notified them. And they were saying that real time, the bank was able to stop it. They were able to recover their money. It took about 3 weeks for them to recover their money. But what actually happened was somebody had copied one of the people's phones and was able to get so much information about them and their family members that they were able to hack into their bank accounts, and they were pulling that money out of the ATM machine. So we do want to be very careful with our phones. If your phone is not being used, have your Wi-Fi shut off, have your Bluetooth shut off, have any data sharing shut off, and maybe shut off your phone every so often too. It's always the smartest way. I usually also tell people, I am not an online shopper. I am not an online banker. All my financial information, I do old school. Hard copy statements, hard copy checks. I use cash. I very rarely use my debit card. Like I said, only at a bank that I trust. And I watch what I'm doing very carefully because of all the people that I've taken care of that have issues. If you are an online person, a friend of mine that works at my office, she was an online person and she was a victim of identity theft 3 times. She learned to watch her accounts every single night to make sure that the transactions matched whatever she did that day. And that's how she resolves her issues. So if you want to be watching your stuff, that's one thing. Like old school, everything has to be hard copy documentation. Either way, that is a safeguard. But if you become a victim of identity theft, you do need to act fast. Most of us know that laws do change every so often. Federally, the law changed a few years back where if you had a transaction under $50, you did not have to, at a store, a merchant didn't have to check a person's ID. Well, Massachusetts state law never changed. If it's $1 transaction or more, somebody should be checking your ID. And or if you're using your PIN number, that's supposed to be sacred and safe, not shared with anybody. So that is a form of security for you. But if I have enough information about you, unfortunately, I can go into most stores or online or over the phone, if it's another female, and order anything in your name nowadays. And nobody would be the wiser. Think about it. If I had enough information about a male, I could order something online nowadays, and nobody would be the wiser. This is another reason why we do need to check our statements, and we do need to watch our bank accounts very carefully. In Massachusetts, like I said, laws never changed. When I go into a store because I want to protect myself and the next person in line, I always have on my credit cards and things like that, see other ID. And if they do not ask me to see other ID when I'm writing a check or paying with a credit card, then I call over the manager and I talk to the manager and I tell the manager they are not training their people properly because they are supposed to be checking. One company that I know that does a very good job of checking, if you're not using a debit card, is Market Basket. They always check IDs. The very few others do. So it's important for us to educate the businesses as well, because we want to keep our stuff as safe as possible. Phishing is another thing that we have to look at. Obviously, anybody that's asking you for your personal information, we do not give it at all, unless there is a true reason for it. So if you are dealing with something that's payroll, obviously you're going to need to give out your social security number or grants or things like that. But if somebody calls you, I don't care who they say they are or where they're from. They could say they're from the IRS. They could have a lot of information about you. Do not give out any personal information. Do not say yes to anything, the word yes. Some of these phishing groups just record you saying yes, and they use that in other means to hurt you. Even when it comes to bill collectors, even if you know you owe the debt, I always tell people Ask for hard copy documentation. Do not give any personal information out. Believe me, if they are a legitimate company, they have your address. Okay. They called you. They know how to reach you. If they send you the hard copy documentation and it's legitimate about the debt, you take care of it. But if it's not a proper debt collector, believe me, they're not going to be sending you anything in the mail. Okay. You did not win that $1 million unless you entered the contest. The IRS does not call you unless you initiate a call to them. There are schemes out there also that say that your nephew or grandson or granddaughter or a friend of your family's is stuck someplace and they need you to wire them money. Wrong. Contact the person themselves. Anytime somebody calls you, be leery of who they really are and say, you know something, I don't know you, I'm going to have to call back, and call your bank or call directly to the company that you do business with and ask them if they gave you a call. A few years back, there was a scam going on for ADP. Everybody in my office received emails that ADP overpaid us and they were going to have to go into our bank account and withdraw a certain amount of money. I called my bank and my human resources person immediately when I saw that email. My bank, I told them, nobody is allowed to withdraw any money from my bank account except for me. They already knew about the scam. They already did their research and they assured me everything was solid. The human resources contacted ADP, let them know about the scam that was going on, and they were able to fix things on their side. So please let people know that this scam is out there. Contact your local police office. Contact the Federal Trade Commission. Let people know so these people can get caught. Malware is another type of identity theft way of transforming your Google or different search engines into somebody else's search engine, where they can actually watch your keystrokes and access different things about you. Viruses can also hit your computers. Having good software, antivirus software, and keeping it up to date is very, very important, especially if you are an online type of person. All right. You should update it and run a scan, a full scan daily. Because unfortunately, in this day and age of identity theft hackers, people are constantly finding new ways to hack people and new different types of viruses to send out. Again, shutting down your computer totally, not leaving it running overnight, is much safer than keeping it open. All right. Doing things hard copy, again, is safe. Please make sure that any documents that are important to you are either saved to that outside hard drive and or literally keep a filing cabinet, print them out. Hard copy documentation is the number one thing that stands up in court. If something should happen to your computer and you get one of those viruses that, it's one of those ransomware type things, and your computer's totally taken over and you're locked out of it, having that hard copy documentation is your lifesaver. So that when you get a new computer or if you have a computer protection company going in your back door to fix it, you've got the hard copy documentation of what you need. If there's ever a problem with your computer and your computer system gets wiped out, you've got the hard copy documentation. So you don't have to worry about it being gone for forever. And like I said, matching those things up is very important. Also, with the thought of computers, we do want to switch our passwords, and we do want to switch the access codes for things every 3 months. A password should not be something short, like my name is Sue. It's only 3 letters long. That is very easy for a hacker to get. Okay. You want to make sure that your passwords are long, having lowercase, uppercase letters, numbers, quotes, anything else that you can think of inside of them, and change them every so often. If perchance you cannot remember them, saving them online is not a good thing, right? You want to keep them documented in a notebook or something like that. That notebook should be under lock and key. And you do not share passwords or anything else with anybody else. Now, where your credit cards and bank come into play, most people, if they need to make a phone call to their bank or their credit card company, the normal question asked is, what's your mother's maiden name, for a security question. Unfortunately, that's public documentation now. The first school that you went to, a hospital that you were born in, the town you lived in, the first street you lived on, all public documentation. Make sure that your security questions are something that people would not understand and your answers are obscure. Give you an example. Maybe it's something that you loved as a child is your security question. And purple balloons is the answer. That could be switched out. When I call my bank, they have an obscure question and an answer on file. So I'll call them and I'll say I need to do a transaction, and they'll say, what's your mother's maiden name? And I'll have to say, that's not my security question. This is, and this is the answer to it. And then they allow me to do the transaction. I have that with all my credit cards and my bank accounts so that I keep my information as safe as possible. As I stated in the very beginning, and I'm going to keep stating this all the way through, I take this very seriously, and I teach this from the angle of paranoia. You are going to decide what works for you in the middle, but as safe as we possibly can be is the way to go. I'm sure that you guys have seen this type of thing before: regular fraud, check washers, credit card fraud, things like that. You want to make sure that you are monitoring, again, your bank accounts and your credit card statements, and be able to freeze your accounts if need be. With check washers, if you remember the movie Catch Me If You Can, it was a movie about an actual check washer. That person went on, after he was caught so many times, to work for the government agency that catches other check washers. But people do these types of things. And when you have a fraud alert placed on your credit report, that stops people, for the most part, with opening up credit cards in your name at different stores, because they have to make sure it really is you before they allow the account to be open. Monitoring your bank statements and credit reports are the only ways that you're going to find out if you've been a victim of either the bank fraud or the credit card frauds. Okay, so you do want to be very careful. I will talk about credit freezes as well, but I'm going to hold off to the end for that one. Now, people will steal your wallet still, okay? That's why I was talking about making sure that you keep things secure. If you don't need your social security card, don't travel with your social security card. If you are going out of state for a holiday, only take your bank cards that you need, okay, for the transactions that you want to do. Also, you want to notify your banks of your travel plans. I've seen people that have moved from one state to another have their bank accounts shut down because the banks are getting very aware of identity theft issues. They actually lose millions of dollars each year to this. So if they see transactions that are out of your norm, they may shut down your account, believing it is a potential fraud. They will reopen it after you talk to them, but they're going to issue another card, and it takes a few days. So letting them know up front about travel plans, that way they know that you're going to be using your credit card in another state or you're making a big purchase, they're aware, they won't shut it down. It also saves you by the laws of identity theft. So if your bank account gets hit, you literally have 2 days of noticing lost or stolen checks or debit card or something like that, notifying the bank within 2 days. The bank, by law, federal law, can hold you responsible for $50. Now, most mass banks will work with you for longer than that, usually for a month. But by federal law, 2 days to 60 days, they can hold you responsible for $500. And after that point in time, they are deemed to be able to hold you responsible for the entire thing, because now you've been deemed to look at 2 bank statements. Why didn't you contact us already? If it's a credit card, you have 60 days to do a dispute. After that 60-day time period, they potentially can hold you responsible for the whole thing. Well, in the beginning of this little series class, I did talk about my mother being a victim of identity theft. Unfortunately, we found out when she broke her hip that my sister had stolen her information and what she did with it. But it had gone on for a while, and my sister lived with my mother. So the bank, even though I knew all the steps to do, and we did the police report and everything else that I'm going to tell you about, they held my mother liable. And they told my mother she had to bring my sister to court. So my mother got a restraining order against my sister, and we got a lawyer involved. And I had proof with signatures, with facial recognition and everything else. And it took all of that to get the bank to not hold my mother liable. Okay, so we do want to make sure, again, that we've got things under lock and key and we're watching things, because unfortunately people do get desperate out there and you never know, so please be aware of your surroundings, be aware of what you're doing with your stuff. Ask questions when somebody asks you for your social security number. I know that it's still on the forms at the hospitals and with medical groups to ask you for your social security number. They have no business and no right to get it. You do not fill that in. When you are in a hospital scenario, the only thing that they have a right to is your name, your billing address, and your insurance information. You do not have to give them your social security number. Anytime somebody asks, how are you going to protect it? Why do you need it? And what are you going to do with it? Okay. If they don't answer the question to your satisfaction, you do not give it out to them. Obviously, for grant purposes, so Social Security, VA grants, things like that, they will need it to track. For payroll purposes, tax purposes, you're going to need to give out the Social Security number. Other than that, any other person has no reason to have it. Okay. If you do have an issue with your Social Security, you can go online or call them. It is one of the hardest ones to fix. So you want to make sure you nip this one in the butt. One of the team from the Social Security Administration taught me to get people to go online to myssa.gov so that you can sign up online for your Social Security statement online. When you're signing up online for it, you actually have a spot to put in a security password. Once you've secured it with your password, other people will have a harder time accessing it. If you are an online type of person, I would do that type of thing. Otherwise, you can always go down in your Social Security office and get a printout. Okay, they no longer mail them to us. For other types of things, we do want to make sure that you have secured wallet or an RAF card holder to secure the magnetic strips and chips on your credit cards. Okay. And I have heard for people that can't get those little card holders, but you can get them at your bank, you also can use tinfoil. We want to keep you away from bankruptcy fraud, tax fraud, investment fraud, phone fraud, house rental fraud, Craigslist issues, and medical stuff. Like I said, the thing is to not give up. And this is retraining our brains because a lot of people, think of everybody as being nice. Not give out any personal information unless you understand why it's needed. You know exactly who you're giving it to, which sometimes means you hanging up the phone and looking up the phone number for the company that you need, especially with those cold calls, because we never know. And watching your mail and watching who's around you. As Ben Franklin always said, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Even if you have LifeLock, they have to put a disclaimer on their website. Nothing out there is 100% safe. Having the monitoring systems costs money. Nobody is as good at monitoring you as you are. I'm not saying don't get LifeLock or something like that if it's offered to you or if you want it. It is a good idea to have different types of identity theft insurance and or monitoring. But that does not stop you or should not stop you from checking your statements when they come in and also checking your credit report. Now you can go directly to TransUnion, Experian, or Equifax to get a copy of your credit report, as I said before, during COVID on a weekly basis or once a year for free in a normal time of year. And the COVID rule is going to run out in April. But I usually lead people to go to www.annualcreditreport.com. And the reason why I send people to this website is because this is the one-stop shop through the federal government to get your credit report for real, for free from each of the reporting agencies. When you are on this website, if there is an issue, if you have something that you need to dispute, you can do it right there and then. They will go back to all three credit reporting agencies for you and the creditor. The creditor will have 30 days to tell you why you owe the money or to remove it from your credit report. And you can do follow-ups on that right there and then. So that is my one-stop shop to go to for checking your credit report. And during a normal course of year, I would say get TransUnion 1 month, Experian 4 months later, Equifax 4 months later, and rotate it around. So you're staying on top of things. But checking all the statements and everything else, you do want to make sure that you are taking care of things. If you are an online shopper, rather than using your credit card, I usually tell people get a gift card, charge it up for the exact amount of money that they're going to spend, and use the gift card instead of your credit card or debit card. And I would do that for phone shopping as well, if that's the way that you like to shop. That keeps, one step away from you. Otherwise, only use one credit card for that particular business. That way you can monitor it a little bit easier. Having the door slot for the PO box is another way. Remember, I was talking about locked mailboxes and things like that. That's another way to secure your mail coming into your house. Keeping things safe, and using the do not call registry are ways to stop the phone scams. Okay, so there are many ways to deal with different things. What works for you is always the best option. Remember, I was talking about turning off Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth and things like that. You want to make sure those things are safe on your phone. And also, whether you have a thumbprint, you should also have a code that you switch every so often to secure your phone. Okay. So I do want to get into one other little piece, and this is something that's brand new. And it's part of the steps to taking care of yourself. So we find something wrong on our credit report, we're going to dispute it. Whether we do a fraud alert or a freeze depends. Have I been a potential victim of identity theft? Remember what happened at Target a few years back, where somebody hacked into them, got a bunch of credit card and debit card numbers, somebody out in Eastern Europe or Russia or wherever. Well, as soon as the information came out on air, I went into my wallet because I had bought something for a friend at Target, which I never shop at, but she wanted something from there. And I pulled out the receipt. I found out it was my debit card. My first action the next day was to contact my bank, go down there, get a new debit card issued. If you're a potential victim, contacting the creditor that it is a potential problem with, and having your account numbers, passwords, security questions switched should take care of the problem. Okay. And if it is a credit card that gets changed, they will bring the history with the new card. So you don't have to worry about losing, history on your credit report. If it's a bank account, usually they can take care of it when you're at your bank. Otherwise, to do it long distance will take a few days. Okay. But that would be your first step if you're a potential victim of identity theft and getting the fraud alert on your credit reports. If you've been an actual victim of identity theft, that's when I say, let's talk about freezing your credit report. Okay. We are going to take more steps. We're going to do a police report. We're going to put in our disputes. We're going to put a freeze on the credit report, and we're going to contact the Federal Trade Commission. The freeze, unlike a fraud alert, actually stops access of anybody accessing your credit report at all, including yourself, without you using a PIN number or a password 48 hours prior to allowing access that they will issue to you. So that PIN number or password cannot be lost. It is a nightmare to fix it if you do lose it. Put it in someplace under lock and key, safe that you will remember. Again, the bank lockbox, perfect spot, because you got to go get it to unfreeze it 48 hours prior to allowing access to your credit report, and then refreeze it afterwards. Okay, so that is like my number one tool. Again, you got to file that police report, even if they just rubber stamp it. It's the proof that you've been a victim of a crime. And then we want to get in touch with the Federal Trade Commission. And since this PowerPoint was done up, there has been a new website made for the Federal Trade Commission for identity theft itself. And in my last couple of seconds, before I open this up for questions, because I know you got a ton of questions and I only have 6 minutes, I do want to bring up that website. So the new website is identitytheft.gov. And the reason why they loaded this website is because the amazing amount of identity theft that has been happening due to the extra federal money coming in for all the unemployment stuff. A lot of people were doing unemployment insurance identity theft, and it was overpowering the Federal Trade Commission's website. So they did a brand new website, and I love it. Because if you become a victim of identity theft, all your steps you can do from here. It also, if you notice up in this corner, has a direct spot for unemployment insurance identity theft. That's how predominant it became this year. If we look down further in this website, you tell them what happened. It has a to-do list of recovery plan, basically the steps that I told you, but it also helps you put your plan into action. It actually has samples of different letters that you're going to be sending out, and it will populate the letters. You just have to put in, the name of the company and certain other information, and you can create letters on Federal Trade Commission stationery to go out to people that maybe it's your credit card companies or whatever. Also on this website, it will help you with a calendar of when to follow up. So they really did an awesome job with this website. It really helps people an awful lot. So if you ever are a victim of identity theft, it's idtheft.gov is where you want to go. Your one-stop shop for everything that you need to do. Also, still on the Federal Trade Commission's website, there is a lot of different films and bulletin boards about different cases of identity theft, what's going on, what to be aware of. They even have a military bulletin board over there. So you can learn a lot more by visiting the Federal Trade Commission website.